In this one, I'm going to be mounting some fork mount bars on my KZ440 Cafe Racer project, and I'm also going to be mounting a digital speedo right where the old handlebars used to mount on those handlebar risers. So to fill in those holes there, we're going to have to make a bracket for the digital speedo to sit on. First thing to do is to remove my top triples so I can slide on the new fork mount bars. There you go, bars are on. And as you can see, it is just hitting the tank. There's only a B stick in it. So to alleviate that issue of the handlebars hitting the tank, what I'm going to do is install a 10mm spacer between the tank mount and the frame mount. So what that's going to do is bring the tank back 10mm so my bars aren't going to hit the front of the tank. Lift it up, install the bolt, then a washer. It'll go hard up against the rubber, then the spacer. Alrighty, now let's see if the bars hit the tank. As you can see now, when I turn the bars from side to side, they clearly miss the tank by 10mm. And as you can see, if I pull on the tank, it doesn't move as it's still got those C-cups sitting on those mounts at the front, so perfect. So with the Trailtech Vapor digital speedometer, I want it to mount on the triple trees just there, covering those two holes which are left from removing the handlebar risers. Alrighty, so off camera I painted the mounting bracket for the digital speedo, and I also trimmed it down on the edges so it's not so big and bulky. So now I'm just going to mount the digital speedo onto the bracket. Like those spacers on that we made, followed by some washers, then the rubbers. Rubbers. Alrighty, well that is definitely tight enough. So with the Trailtech digital speedometer, it comes with this little plug, and each of these lights go underneath your little indicator windows. So I'm going to have one for a left and a right indicator, a neutral light and a high beam light. So I'm hoping that when I plug it into this plug, it'll actually work. So after hooking this wiring up from the Trailtech digital speedometer, we've worked out that the blue wire and the black wire need to be swapped over, as the black wire is plugging into a positive on the factory wiring and the blue is plugging into the ground. So I've got to swap them two over. I've just swapped over the black wire and the blue wire where they go into the plug. I just de-pin them and then swap them over. So I'm going to plug them into the factory wiring, hit the ignition and see if they all work. Ignition on, the high beam there is working. Just turn it off. Yep, now indicators. Yep, other indicator. I'm just going to put these little rubber grommets in which hold the indicator windows. So I want my neutral light here, high beam here, left indicator, right indicator. Now to work out the lights, pop this off. That's my neutral light, high beam, left indicator, and that's my right indicator light. Now I'm going to wire the actual speedo itself into my ignition power wire. You can wire these directly to your battery, and if the speedo sensor doesn't sense your front wheel moving for 20 minutes, that backlight will stay on. So essentially it's going to be draining your battery for 20 minutes. So that's why I'm hooking it up to my ignition switch and not directly to my battery. So wiring the red positive wire from the speedo onto the positive wire for the ignition. Now I'm going to wire this ground into this negative right here. Next wire to hook up is the Tacho, and this just wraps around your spark plug lead. The manual recommends that you coil it around at least 5 times, and to make sure that the coils are nice and tight on the wire and that they're nice and close together. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so plenty. Now I'm going to just tape it in place because I obviously don't want it coming loose. Another thing I had to do was with the original tachometer cable, it went into the rocker cover just there. So what I had to do with that spline that just screws onto the rocker cover where the cable went in, we had to braze in a bung. So now that the cable's not in there, oil's not going to spit out. So that was necessary as well. Now to move on to the speedo wiring. So just got to plug this into here. So how this speed sensor works is you just replace one of the bolts which secures the rotor with a magnet, and every time the magnet spins past this sensor, it picks up your speed. Now it's time to mount the sensor, and I'm going to mount it right about here. So that's the digital gauge mounted on my 84 KZ440. Yes, I know the profile at the front is a little bit high, but I really couldn't do much about that as I needed the bottom of the gauge to clear this bolt which runs through the triple trees. Also needed to mount it in a way that it cleared the ignition, so really didn't have much of a choice there. So what I will do is mount a cafe racer fairing on the front of this bike, so that's just going to hide that high profile of the gauge when you're looking at the bike from the front. Anyway, without further rambling, let's start the bike up and see if everything works. Going to spin my front wheel to make sure that it's reading a speed. As you could see, the speedo is working along with the Tacho, and as you can also see, my neutral light's working along with my high beam, and I currently have my indicators disconnected, so I won't be able to run them at the moment. But as you can see, everything's wired in and everything's working perfectly the way it should. That's going to do it for this one. In the next video, what I'll be doing is just installing a headlight, some new indicators, and I'm also going to be cutting down my front fender, so be sure to keep an eye out for that video. But as I said, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks very much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.